After the failure of the judges and elders to bring the type of political stability they wanted, the nation of Israel looked for a worldly alternative. Israel wanted to be just like the other pagan nations. They wanted to be ruled by an earthly king. I say earthly king because they were rejecting their heavenly king. You see, God desired to rule Israel, but Israel rejected him. They wanted a king they could see and hear and touch. Samuel was not in favor, but God granted their request. God told Samuel, "The people are not rejecting you, they are rejecting me." God is still looking for people who will crown him as king of their lives. When we follow the ways of the world, like Israel, we're rejecting his kingship. We're refusing his lordship in that particular area of our lives. Samuel anointed Saul to be the first king of Israel. Saul was a tall, strong man and the obvious choice for king. But Saul's heart did not completely belong to God, and God rejected him as king. While Saul was still on the throne, God began looking for a new king who would rule Israel under his divine authority. To replace Saul, God chose a young, humble shepherd boy named David. Man looks at the outer appearance, but God looks at the heart. So Samuel anointed David as king over Israel. But because of Saul's pride and selfishness, he would not relinquish the throne. As a result, David spent much of his adult life running from the wrath of Saul. After Saul's death, David was crowned king, many years after he had been anointed as king. David was a godly ruler. The nation of Israel experienced unprecedented prosperity under David's leadership. They were victorious in their wars and were the envy of other nations. God had truly fulfilled two of his promises. He had given them the land, and they were indeed a great nation. In addition to being a great king, David was a gifted musician and songwriter. The book of Psalms consists primarily of David's poetry and songs. Some were written while Saul was pursuing David, others during times of peace. In his songs, David reveals his own heart in both good times and bad. It's easy to see why David was called a man after God's own heart. What if God pointed at you and said to an angel standing nearby, Now there's a man, now there's a woman after my own heart. How would that make you feel? Pretty good, I would imagine. To find out what made David so special in God's eyes, read his biography. You can read about the reign of King Saul and King David in 1 and 2 Samuel. Also, 1 Chronicles is a slightly different viewpoint of David's reign. After his death, Samuel anointed David's son, Solomon, to be king over Israel. Solomon prayed for divine wisdom, and God granted his request. Solomon was at one time the wisest man who ever lived, and for many years ruled his kingdom wisely. In the Old Testament books of 1 Kings and 1 Chronicles, you can read the account of King Solomon's reign. Like his father, King Solomon was also a prolific writer. One of the most beautiful books in the Bible, the Song of Solomon, portrays a devoted husband's desire for his beloved bride. During his years as king, Solomon collected and authored hundreds of wise sayings. These timeless treasures are known as the Book of Proverbs. Solomon's heart, however, was slowly distracted. Over the years, Solomon's wisdom decreased, and he began to err in judgment. Solomon took many foreign women into his harem that turned his heart from God. Solomon evolved into a disillusioned old king. In the book of Ecclesiastes, Solomon revealed his unsuccessful search for the true meaning of life. At this point in our study, I'm going to insert the book of Job simply because it's considered part of the wisdom literature. Actually, many believe Job was the first book of the Bible ever written. Job is the ancient story of a godly man who lost his family and fortune because of satanic assault. Though he sank into the depths of despair, in the end, God honored Job's obedience and faith and restored his fortune tenfold.